All right, everyone, welcome to tonight's webinar. Do this, don't do that, common mistakes in private practice ownership and how to avoid them. Tonight's webinar is sponsored by As Does Career Compass and our friends at Schroeder and Heisel. I'm Kendra Johnson, and I'm the Senior Manager of Sponsorships and Programs, and I'm one of the staff members that are helpful and here to help you anytime you guys need in our central office here in Chicago, Illinois. We're excited to have you here tonight. Before we begin, I wanted to note that all attendees are muted so that we don't pick up any background noises. And we appreciate that you guys will be using our chat feature to share any feedback or certainly provide any questions throughout the presentation, which our speaker will be more than happy to address at the end of tonight's presentation. Certainly make sure that you're writing those down and entering them in for us. There's a control panel on the right hand of your screen. You can type in those questions there at any time, and again, we'll be collecting those and reporting back out after the presentation concludes at the end of tonight's program. We'll also provide you with the contact information for tonight's presenters, so you'll be able to follow up with them individually and continue to have that dialogue outside of tonight's program. Career Compass is a resource to help you prepare for graduation and transition to the first step in your career path. We are so excited to be working with experts in the field, such as our friends at Schroeder and Heisel, to develop new programs and resources for you like tonight's webinar. Please visit Career Compass to explore all it has to offer. I would now like to turn it over to our partners at Schroeder and Heisel and welcome Christian Pearson to tonight's webinar.
Hey, Kendra. Good evening, everybody. Thanks all for jumping on. Just want to say that we're continuing to build this and feedback and additional information that you all want us to cover for you. Let us know so we can make this better and better. But let me introduce Stephen here for you guys. He's a Director of Dental Consulting with Ideal Practices. He's done over 550 startup practices in his career. He's been the Director of Consulting as he guides entire consulting processes with their clients from a startup enterprise. He's an expert in developing the entire plan, really, from start to finish, right, Stephen, with getting people out of the situations they don't want to be in and right into the place where they can be with owning and running their own practice. Before this, he was a leader in dental lending with a prominent bank and has just really a fantastic career of expertise in dentistry. He's been married for, gosh, how long now, buddy? I'm not even sure. But you got 3 girls.
3 girls. Yes.
Yeah, 3 girls. And just a fantastic guy, and is going to do a great job tonight to get us some super information. So, Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Kristin, Kendra, thank you very much. Great to be here this evening. And I'm actually in my home office, so the door is locked, so there could be 3 crazy girls that could run down, but nah, they're locked out for tonight. So, but thanks very much. Kendra, thank you very much to ASDA for this opportunity, and Kristin, thanks for obviously your support and the work we've done together as well. So I'm really excited to be sharing a lot of great ideas tonight on this webinar. We did this webinar earlier today and had a really great turnout. And a lot of great information, a lot of great questions that came out of that webinar earlier today. Hope to be able to share some great concepts with you all this evening. Like Kristin said, I'll go through a little bit of my bio. My name's Stephen Schroeder. I'm the Director of Consulting and one of the partners here at Ideal Practices. Our firm focuses strictly on consulting for startup dental practices. We've developed a proven step-by-step process that's created some of the biggest success stories in all of dentistry. And I'm proud to be able to sit here tonight. Normally when I'm doing my presentations, I walk around a lot. So, if you see me wiggling, it's just because it's my natural tendency to be like walking around at a presentation. So I'll do this while sitting down. So tonight, I really want to talk about the proper steps of starting up a practice. A lot of you will probably be thinking about private practice ownership in the very, very near future. And I wanted to be able to share those concepts with you all this evening, so that if when the time comes that you are ready to take that next commitment and ready to take that path towards private practice ownership, whether it's be towards a startup or even acquisition, that you've got some really good framework and some really good background and obviously guidance and support there to be able to help you make very good, confident decisions for your future. So a lot of things you're thinking about today can set you up for that future. So today I'm going to jump into some of those concepts. So I'm going to share my screen and make sure I got it. All right. Everybody see good? Kristin Kendra, screen up?
Yeah, buddy. You're on.
Looks great.
All right. All right. Dentistry's ideal practices. So it's the name of our firm. So tonight, how to open your own successful startup practice that nearly any dentist can afford with a proven step-by-step process. My goal is to be able to show you the background as far as the things that we help guide our clients through on a step-by-step basis. Very preliminary information, but also help you prepare for life beyond dental school. As going into dental school, what things can you do today that will put you on the right path for the future? Our concepts are here that anybody can afford to start up a dental practice, and the key word of this this part here is successful. Anybody can start up a practice. The idea is to be successful at starting up a practice, because you only got one shot in starting up a practice correctly. A lot of things go into starting up a practice or even acquiring a practice. Since I don't consult on acquisitions, obviously my concepts and obviously the direction that we're heading tonight is talking about the scratch startup path. Here's my promise. My promise to you is this. I'm not going to show you stories about like the stories I'm going to share with you this evening are about regular doctors that came into opening up their own practice. So basically, I'll just read this. So I'm going to show you how regular doctors without any business experience are opening profitable startup practices with hundreds of patients, filling up the schedule in the first months. I'm going to show you the simple proven process that cuts out the typical risks so that you can practice in a facility that you're proud to own. Why do people want to own their own practice? Quite simply, they want the control and the freedom to be able to do the things that they want to do in their own practice. As you venture out of dental school into private practice ownership, whether it be corporate or in a private practice owner scenario, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, a lot about the things that are out there, and these things will help prepare your future towards private practice ownership. I'm going to show you how startups can be amazing. Within this process, having been a part of multiple startups myself, I mean, like in business myself, and this being one of them at one point, this business was a startup. I love entrepreneurialism, and my team does, and we're excited to be able to help support entrepreneurialism in our industry. So what makes this different? The difference is there's the typical path that a lot of your colleagues may go down or have gone down when starting up a practice, and there's the proven path. I'm not trying to give you a proven path or a more successful path. Having been a part of over 500 startups in my career, I'm drawing upon 500. With my team and everybody's behind me at Ideal Practices, we're probably approaching well over 1,500, if not more, startups as far as experience combined. That's a lot of experience to pull in and to be able to then give that kind of education back to starting up a practice. We've seen a lot. You do something 1,000 times, you're going to see either trends or predict things that can happen within the process without the trial and error. So I'll kind of get you on the inside of starting up. My team and I open up highly successful practices, just for private practice ownership. I don't work with any corporate dental practices. We don't work with any DSOs or corporate based. We are simply supporting entrepreneurship nationwide. We have clients all over, almost representative in every single state at this point. So with a startup, there are a couple different paths you can go down. And having seen this process done for almost 15 years now myself, I've seen a lot of on the left-hand side, the typical path. Again, this is your first time, or anybody's first time opening up a practice. And with anything, with doing anything the first time, there's always the trial and error. Think about, like, as you're going through dental school and your clinical training, and you're going to start doing, before you pass your boards, you're going to be doing crowns and crown preps. And I always ask my clients, you know, how long did it take for that first crown prep? And I hear big numbers, you know, it took me an hour, it took me an hour and a half or longer. And then I ask them, you know, after you've done it multiple times or hundreds of times, how long does it take? And they go, oh, it doesn't take any time at all. Starting up a practice, or starting up a business for that matter, there are risks. The typical path of starting up, and having seen this happen in this industry, having done it so many times, obviously without not my clients, but it can be slow growth. A lot of people think about starting up a dental practice and they go, wow, I just want to do it. It sounds like fun, but they don't have a process. They just they jump into it feet first, which is great, but then they jump in feet first and go, whoa, what should I be doing first? Or what goes first? Should I be getting my loan? Should I be looking for space? And when do I need to buy equipment? And when do I need to bring in? And when do I need to start learning by setting up my protocol? When do I need to get my insurances, you know, get my insurance credentialing going? There's all these different steps, and there's a lot of things happening. Even with an acquisition, there's a lot of things happening. And how do you sort that out? So there's hundreds of confusing variables. You also get into vendor bias, whether it's from equipment or whether it's from different vendors. They'll say, this is the best, or this is the part you need to go down. And I just don't subscribe to the bias. You know, I think there's a lot of options out there, and unfortunately, big corporations in some cases will push towards certain bias towards vendors or manufacturers and things like that, because, well, they're compensated to do so. It's not that they're doing is bad. It's more of just what the ivory tower is telling them to do. So they're kind of caught in a catch-22 where they need to be representing certain things that may not be in your best interest or the practice owner's best interest, but they're following their own corporate protocol. The last one here is you'll hear stories about this, maybe from friends or from colleagues or people that open up practices where they're continuing to work as an associate 2-3 years after they open up their own practice. To me, that's not a real successful startup. My goal for my clients and our clients here at Ideal Practices is how quickly can we get them out of working as an associate. If you're thinking about opening up your own practice or acquiring your own practice, then obviously the goal is, and the reason why you want to do that is, again, the control and freedom to be able to make those decisions and not work for somebody else. So to avoid that, you want to have a proven process, which has I'll talk to you about the 13 stages. What I mean by successful practice is getting off the ground quickly. A startup that doesn't get off the ground very, very quickly, it's hard to be able to build momentum if you don't have momentum from day one. In other words, you've got to have a strategy, a marketing strategy. You got to have the right location and all these different variables lining up just right for launch of a startup. Without that launch, then it's just a kind of a gradual growth, and it's really, really hard to spark a practice 6 or 8 months into a startup. What you want to be able to do is set yourself up with a process whereby you can have this big launch, into day one, so that all your systems are ready to go and you're ready to launch into private practice ownership. Negotiating with power, what I mean by that is putting yourself in a position, like for example, with lenders. A lot of times it's please, please, please give me money because I really want to open up this practice. What I want to be able to do is put you in a position where the banks are competing for your business. I think there's one of those, that commercial, when banks compete, you win. I like that because I want banks or any other vendors to be able to be in a position that you're negotiating in that position because you have the power, because you've done your due diligence and you have a process behind you that puts you in the right path. That way you're not getting that bias. A proven plan. There are so many stages to prepare to open up your own practice. Go into it with a plan. I'm going to talk to you about some of that planning and that early planning that you can do even today as a dental student to prepare yourself for that future opportunity, because some of the decisions that you make today can influence your ability to open up a practice, whether it's in the near future or like you may have to put things off for a very, very long time. So some of those things I want to make sure we can talk about today. Obviously, with a proven process, guidance, support, and ultimately you're going to gain freedom and control of running your own practice. So I like the proven process in order for you to gain that freedom and control to run the practice and the business that you want. Love to tell you a story about Dr. Lauren. Dr. Lauren's one of our practice owners, one of our clients. She opened up her practice about 1.5 years ago. The one thing about Lauren was she came out of dental school, had been working for about 6 to 9 months, and said, I'm committed. I want to have my own practice. Here's where I want to be in this part of the country. She's west of Denver, Colorado, in a beautiful, beautiful area. Along Colorado River, in a beautiful space. And for her, she really had the idea and the conviction of, I want to own my own practice, and I know the kind of patients and the procedures and the things that I want to have in my practice. And we were able to really help support and guide her because she didn't have really there was a kind of a bumpy funding path for her. So we had to, really had to customize that path. But the biggest success story for Dr. Lauren was in her first 4 weeks of opening her practice, she had over 200 new patients. And that wasn't by surprise. That was by really the process that we helped lay out for her. And her story, 209 patients in 4 weeks, is a big number. And it's not typical, but in her case, in the market and what was chosen, it was spot on for what she was looking to do. So great story for her. She's a little bit over 1 year of ownership right now, and she just recently hired her own associate, within her practice. So no matter what everybody else says, there is a path to get you there, but you need to be committed to jump in. And her commitment really helped us guide her towards her future vision, to be able to reverse engineer what her end goal was and then build back from that from square one. With startups, there are 3 possibilities. I call it kind of the 3 different levels of private practice ownership. You can be open, which anybody can open up a dental practice. With being open, all you need is basically chairs, 4 walls, and a roof. Anybody can do it. But typically that's not the goal, it's just getting open. You can be successful. At success, now you're profitable. Now you're taking home income. You've got a very profitable business. You're sustainable at this point. You're very successful. The ultimate goal is this, with my little smiley face, which is fulfillment. Fulfillment is a different category. You're open, awesome. You're successful, I'm profitable. Fulfillment is where practice owners go beyond the walls of their practice to be community leaders. They're in a space that they love. They're serving the population that they love to serve. Their ideal kinds of patients. They have freedom and control over their business. And they're fulfilled because all these other pieces feed into their practice. Their personal life and everything is fulfilled. And a lot of the concepts that we help our clients help them develop in order to be fulfilled, I'm going to share with you tonight. So here's the ultimate thing. My goal, I'm not going to talk you to a startup. I don't talk anybody candidly. I think my partner Jamie and I have probably talked more people out of startups and talked them into startups. To start up a practice takes a huge, huge commitment. Owning a practice, whether it's an acquisition, takes a huge commitment. But I want to make sure that we can address the fears and concerns that are typically out there for a startup, and it's really in a couple of different concepts. At the end, I'm going to show you the path that we guide each one of our clients towards in our 13 stages. So you're going to have all that information I'm going to leave you with this evening. And again, my information will be available to answer a ton of questions. Brief background, like I mentioned, I'm Director of Consulting. I'm only other partner here. You may have seen my partner. He's the founding partner. His name's Jamie Amos. You see him a lot probably on Facebook and on Dentaltown and a lot of different blogs and feeds. I've got about 13 plus years, almost 14 years now with consulting, almost, actually I need to update that, almost 15 years right now. 500 plus startups. And what I like to share is my why. I saw, having worked with so many startup practices, coming from a big corporate setting myself, the corporate setting was sell widgets to dentists. In other words, it was a sales-driven environment, which was great. And I was really successful at what I was doing. The challenge, and really kind of the internal challenge I had, was I saw a lot of practitioners going into private practice ownership without a plan, and really kind of following everybody's different corporate protocol. At that point, I said, I want to be an advocate for private practice ownership. There's a better path. So I wanted to take them down that path. Look, brief background on our company so that everyone's kind of aware. My partner wrote this book about 3 years ago. It's a best-selling book on Amazon on choosing the right practice location. We host the Ideal Practices podcast, and you may recognize us through our website, which is howtoopenadentaloffice.com. Pretty catchy. We also developed a trademark program called the Dental Startup MBA. So inside of our 13-stage process, we developed a whole nother, we call it a dental MBA. It's not a true, obviously, Masters of Business Administration, not a true MBA, but we trademarked this program because inside of what we do, we help prepare practice owners towards really towards entrepreneurship with systems and protocol, and help them prepare for that. So there's a lot of rigorous training that's involved in that process. You'll see here twice a year we host a 2-day event. We call it the Startup Practice Blueprint, where we bring in industry-wide experts for a very rigorous 2-day course. Our next one is almost sold out in the fall, and we'll have one in the spring. We usually do these twice a year in various locations. We've done in Florida, Las Vegas, kind of all over the country. Other things that are really important to us that actually our clients share into is what we're passionate about. Obviously, our passion is startups and entrepreneurship and things that we help and if you look at every one of our clients and some of the best practice owners out there, they give back to their community or back to the industry somehow, or somehow help support their community. We're helping, even though we do startups and we're nationwide, we are helping entrepreneurship. So actually, our clients, for every practice that we open, we are simultaneously funding 10 startups in third world countries with micro lending. This is something that we're passionate about as a company because it helps fuel entrepreneurship, and it takes people that are in otherwise very maybe leave a life of destitution or are involved in, subjected to human trafficking. It gets them out and helps them build the confidence as well. So this is something that we're really passionate about as a company. So here is, I would say, the meat and potatoes of tonight, and the top 3 questions that we always get about startups, which is this. The first question is really about affordability. The second question is about the right location. And the third one is about getting new patients through the door. So the 3 keys of success of a startup, if there's 3 main keys, are any doctor can afford a startup. And I try to relate it to production or procedures. And obviously this will, applies to, it's a math equation, but applies to general dentistry. But any doctor can afford a startup, as long as you can produce 8 crowns per month. Now, today it seems like a big task. As you get out, I will tell you that 8 crowns is 2 crowns a week, and that's nothing for most people in a couple of years. Key number 2, the right location will get you thousands of new patients, but it doesn't have anything to do with signage or pretty buildings or traffic counts, despite what a lot of people in the industry may say. And key number 3 is you need a proven process. You actually need a step-by-step process that leads to profitability quickly. Like I said before earlier, you have one shot at doing this correctly. I've had even banks approach us that say, hey, would you be able to help our clients that have opened up 3 years ago and help because they're struggling? And unfortunately, I'm not a practice management consulting firm because I'm not there to, unfortunately, I can't fix problems. I can't fix if they chose the wrong location. Can't fix if you chose the wrong town or the wrong area or the wrong builder, the wrong building. You're not building mobile offices, so it's hard to be able to say, it's impossible to say, wow, I just want to move the practice because I chose the wrong process or wrong area. So we want to be able to help prevent those mistakes from happening. How do we do this? Here we go. This is our 13 stages. Each one of our clients sees this graph. And this graph is what we take through a step-by-step process with our clients. Now, in between each one of these stages, there's probably a lot of other small steps in here. So it's a much bigger process once we really start to spread it out and really get into it. But these are the 13 stages that you can go through you can go into sequential order that will properly lead you to opening up your practice. If you look here on the bottom, it's about a 12-month process. From the time you have an idea in the concept of I'm committed to starting up a practice, it will typically take about 12 months. It could be a little bit shorter. It could be a little bit longer depending on how long it takes to find space and a few other variables. But on average, our clients open up in about 12 months from the time that we're brought on to the time that they're finished. A little technical difficulty here. So what I talked about is key number 1, which is any doctor can afford a startup practice as long as you produce 8 crowns per month. And here's affording a practice. And I'll talk about like I don't like the idea of just affording a practice. When I talk with doctors all over the country and I do our presentations at our Startup Practice Blueprint, we usually kind of canvass the crowd and ask typical what would be the reimbursement for a crown. And invariably, we usually kind of land and get an agreement that on average, reimbursement would be about $700 per crown. At 8 crowns, at $700, equals about $5,600. Okay. A $500,000 loan, and on average, this doesn't include commercial real estate. We're just talking about the startup loan itself. It's about $500,000. So on average, startups are ranging in between about $400,000 to about $600,000. It really depends on the market. But let's just shoot in the middle and say a $500,000 loan, a 10-year payout at 5% interest yields a payment of about $5,300 per month. Now, can it be afforded? That this doesn't factor in payroll and those things. It factors in the loan. Now, obviously, you need to have the right bank and a plan. I'm going to talk about the planning part and the preparation part to prepare yourself to talk with banks. There's a lot of different banks that are out there in this industry. What you want to do is align yourself with a lender that understands dental practices, number 1, obviously, and number 2, that understands startups. A startup practice is way different and has much different cash flow demands than an acquisition or obviously an established practice owner. So it's going to be key that you align yourself with great dental lenders that understand we need to help create cash flow. Cash flow is, they talk about cash is king. Well, I talk about in dental startups, cash flow is the entire kingdom. As a startup, we need to create cash flow. And how do you create cash flow? Either have lower your expenses and increase your revenues. That gap in the middle is what we call cash flow. With cash flow, now you can grow your practice. So we need to create that. One way you can create it is making sure you can lower your expenses. which means having the right bank with the right plan, the right repayment options. They'll play a big influence on the whole process. Now, like I said, anybody can afford it. And again, the affordability part of having a loan isn't necessarily a goal. I hear from banks sometimes in that industry that they'll say things like, you know, only 1% of dental practices fail. Well, understand what they're basing that number upon. It's a good number, very good industry. Obviously, I've been in it for a long time. It is a very secure industry. But 1% default means 1% is not paying their loan. But that's not really the idea of success. For a bank, it's looking at going, well, our loans are paid on time, therefore the success rate is X. The goal of, again, back to a few pages ago, a few slides ago, is it's not just affording the loan, it's how quickly can you be successful so you're not working for somebody else. And a lot of times, guess what? A lot of colleagues get stuck. They get stuck here because they go, I can afford it, I know that that's okay, and the loan gets me there, but that's not the path to success. That's just simply getting open. So here are things as far as financial preparation for what I call financial preparation for success, or for your future successful startup or even acquisition for that matter. So I would, if everybody was here, if I had a show of hands, but obviously I can't see all of you. Show of hands, how many people have student loans? I'm sure a lot of you, if not all of you, are raising your hands at this point. Banks today understand, whether you're acquiring a practice or starting up a practice, that you're going to have student loans. The goal of student loans, or how making sure with your student loans that it prepares you and ensure your repayment option and how you're set up on your student loans aligns for your future. What I mean by that is this. If you're thinking about starting up or acquiring a practice, maybe in 1 to 3 years or 1 to 4 or 5 years after dental school, then take the lowest payment that you can have on your student loans. In most cases, that will be what's referred to as IBR payments, or income-based repayment options. This option will give you the ability of having the lowest payment. Now, a lot of times what happens is, every once in a while I have clients that go, wow, I'm paying down my student loan debt really, really fast. And then I ask the second question, or the second part is, great, liquidity. In other words, what do you have in the bank right now? What do you have in your savings? What can you get at tomorrow? Checking, savings, money market, securities, stocks, or anything like that. And they go, oh, I don't have a lot because I'm paying down my student loans really fast. My first thing I would always say to that client is, stop paying anything extra on your student loans. The banks would much rather you have a balance of, if you have debt, student loans, it's okay. But the personal liquidity of paying yourself first and starting to put away some of that rainy day fund will put you in the better position to be able to acquire the best funding, whether you're acquiring or starting up a practice. So don't get caught in, I need to rip down my student loan debt tomorrow, and then you sacrifice putting money away, because that will actually put you in a negative position of acquiring the kind of funding that you'll need for your future. So stick with payments. Don't necessarily refinance out of your student loans either. It's kind of like a club. Once you refinance out of income-based repayments and you refinance into maybe lower interest on a shorter term, you can't go back to that club. In other words, once you refinance out of that, you're incapable of going back there to income-based repayment. So then all of a sudden, now your payment goes from a very manageable payment to a high payment. And how that affects you negatively when you start to talk with lenders for your practice acquisition or your startup is quite simply this. Now your personal cash flow is going to be negatively impacted. So if your goal is practice ownership over the next, say, 1 to 3 years beyond dental school, then keep your payments as low as possible and then pay yourself first. This concept came to me about almost 20 years ago from my own financial planner, who said, let's put a little bit of money away. A little bit of money to have that habit. Generally speaking, if you're somewhere between, You can accrue somewhere between 10 and maybe 30,000 in liquid assets, not retirement, but 10 to 30,000 in liquid assets. By the time you're ready to acquire, go out and start up a practice and we're able to get funding, you're going to be in the best position to be able to acquire the best funding for your future. Credit card. I talk about here more about credit cards. Now, number one, look at your credit. You can go to annual credit, I think it's free credit report or annualcreditreport.com, pull your credit report on an annual basis. It's not a hard check. All it is a soft pull on your credit to make sure that things are in line. Once you get out, keep your credit card balances down. Things like student loans or car loans are what's called installment loans. So they have a predetermined time in which those things are going to be paid out with a predefined repayment. Credit card balances are what's called revolving balances. So you want to keep your revolving balances down, especially balances in relation to what your credit limits are. And the last one is really on your character. And this is not like, are you a bad person or are you a good person? It's more about making sound financial decisions. So I wrote in here, no Ferrari. So you're going to come out of dental school. Every one of you has an opportunity of making 6 figures in most environments. So you're going to be making a very good living once you finish up dental school. But make sound decisions today. The future has a lot of things out there for you. Don't necessarily go out and buy the big home or the fancy car just yet. Go out, put some money aside, think about what your future is, and get there. Oh, last thing on student loans. When you finish up dental school, if you move, make sure your service providers for your student loans knows of your new address. Make sure once you finish up dental school, unless you're going into residency or anything like that, that you have a letter from that institution that says that your loans are in deferment. Because if you're starting to get, if you think they're in deferment, and then you get a bill, they think you need to pay the bill. I've had this happen to clients before where they go, yeah, I thought I was in deferment and I was getting bills. I figured it was their mistake, so I didn't pay it. Next thing you know, they're 3, 5, 6 months delinquent on their repayment. So student loans, make sure when you move, update the address. They will find you. If it goes to your old address and it doesn't get paid, unfortunately, that's your fault. They will assume that you had that. You had that bill. Key point number 2, the right location. This is my favorite part. There is so much out there about where you should go, what kind of building, and what you should be looking for when you're opening up a practice. And I'll say this to clients. There are a lot of locations out there. And it could be retail, it could be an office building, could be a medical office building, it could be on the side of a road, it could be a strip mall, it could be all kinds of different options. However, I'm going to show you some examples of like practice owners that have you can get thousands of patients, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the big sign or the pretty building or the street corner where Starbucks is. Here's a story. This is Dr. Alexis. This is what her space looked like before it was built out. This is her building where she's currently located. She's been there for almost 2 years. And the reason why I bring this up is she is in this building on this road. I wouldn't say the busiest road in town. This is her monument sign. Her name is not on there. Her practice is along these windows up in here. She has no sign here. In order to get her practice, you need to drive up around to the top of this building up in the back. So her front entrance is actually on the back hand side of this building with no sign. And 2 doors down from another general dentist. She's a general dentist. In her first year, she produced over $1 million in this location from a scratch startup with no patient base. We could say it had nothing to do with this space. She didn't have the signage. It was all about the process and the marketing to help drive the patients to this particular location. And I love this story about her. And I'll tell you about what her fulfillment was, and you'll laugh about this. Some people say, oh, I want to do this, or I want to eventually go back to dental school and teach, or I want my name maybe on the dental school. She said, I want the freedom to build a practice to a point where I can actually go ride and show my horses more often. That was her goal. And she said, I want to build a practice up to a point of profitability so I don't have to work there all the time. And so, well, after a couple of years, she's riding her horses a lot more. So here's what I'm not saying. If you have a rich uncle and your rich uncle wants to build you a building with the big sign on the street corner, then great. However, what I'm not saying is the successful practice owners don't require the same location as, say, McDonald's or Starbucks. In most cases, the real estate that's on the street corner when McDonald's or Starbucks goes can be 50% more than literally one street over or a block off of this busy street corner. 50% less of rent and cost is a huge cost saver. So in other words, you're not selling coffee or French fries. So don't chase the busy street corner because a real estate person or somebody told you, you need to be on the busy street with X amount of cars per day and a big sign. I got lots of examples of lots of practice owners that don't have the big sign, not on the busy street corner. It's about process, marketing, and really making sure that the space aligns well with you and the economics of the space. A lot of things go into that. I would ask for a show of hands again, if anyone's familiar with the concept of the peanut gallery. The concept of the peanut gallery came through many years ago. I think actually the origination is either through like vaudeville and through, or even through Shakespeare. And the concept of the peanut gallery, you can Google this, is this. Back in early times when there were these outdoor theaters, the commoners or the cheap seats were in the front of the stage. And these areas were pretty disgusting, especially back in like Shakespearean time. It was dirty, and basically these were the commoners that would just, they would yell and disrupt the all the theater performers. So the theater owners got together and said, how do we get all these people to be quiet? What can we give them? They gave them peanuts. So what did these people do with the peanuts? They actually threw them at the performers. The concept is, the reason why I bring this up is anybody today, especially with the, with so much on social media and blogs and posts, anybody with a keyboard has an opinion. Whether it's, you may have friends that have done this once. You may have a company that said that they've opened up a practice before. Align yourself with people that have done it hundreds of times, because somebody that's done this once or gone through something once doesn't have the experience. So avoid the peanut gallery that is candidly, they're trying to give you, they have well-intentioned advice, but it may propel you into off the path that you're trying to pursue. So just beware of when you ask an opinion of a gallery or from a Facebook group, for example, you're asking opinions from lots of people, and those opinions may be correct, but they may not be correct for your particular custom situation. So beware. Demographics. Before you ever look for space, you need to do a demographic study, not just a report. A report is simply numbers on paper. When I talk about a study, I talk about information that goes into demographics. These are things like, where do you want to be? So this is kind of a very generic thing I did on a Facebook event one night, and it's very elementary, but I'll walk you through kind of the concepts here. The top concept is, where would you want to be in terms of desirability? Where do you desire to open up a practice? Is there something that draws you to an area of the country, or whether it's family or schools or future or wife, significant other, husband, things like that? So you need to understand where you desire to be, not just what's the best area in the country to open up a practice. The second one, this is actually a boxing glove, and I talk about competition. Who is the competition in your marketplace? So you'll hear things like ratios, and what are the ideal ratios per general dentist or pediatric dentist? There's all these different ratios. But beyond the numbers, understand who your competition is in that particular market when you go out to open up your own practice. What kind of procedures are they doing? What kind of marketing are they doing? What kind of presence do they have in the community? Look beyond just those numbers. And last but not least, this is your ideal patient. Understand today you don't have an ideal patient. Tomorrow in the future, you will have an ideal patient profile, which is who do you like to see? What is their profile? What do they look like? What kind of procedures do they enjoy? What are they from? What are their demographics? You'll start to formulate opinions about who your ideal patients are, and you want to align the area with your ideal patients. And then key number 3 is quite simply use a proven step-by-step process that you can reach profitability with marketing and things like that in your first few months. The most successful startups get a spark in the beginning. I talked about this earlier in the 13 stages. It starts from vision. I'm going to talk to you about vision here in a few minutes, and goes through from financing to then analyzing the demographics to then looking at site selection. You have to do demographics way before site selection. A lot of times people will chase the pretty building and then they go, oh, should I even start up here? And then as you go through, you're going to get in some more nuts and bolts. Talking about design, equipment selection, construction, and then marketing. And then at the bottom, then you have your grand opening. So in this concept, you're looking at about 12 entire months of this entire process, and it really starts with your vision. And I want to talk to you about what goes into your vision. I'll skip over one else. Today, your vision is you're going to be developing a vision. Things to consider in your vision are quite simply this. What are your personal core values? What do you stand for? What things are important to you, not only professionally, but personally? You'll understand as you get out of dental school, who are your ideal patients? This is who do you want to attract in your practice? What kind of procedures do you want to do? What kind of procedures don't you want to do? And then last but not least, this is an inside concept that we use with our clients, so I'd like to share with you tonight, is KRG. It's an acronym for how do you want to be known? In other words, how do you want to be known in the community? How do you want to be known as a private practice owner? What do you want to be remembered by? This is more of a question of legacy. In other words, years from now, when you retire, people start to think about you. How are you remembered in your community? It's very, very important. And then the G is quite simply give. How do you want to give? How do you want to give back to your community? How do you want to give, to the community out of private practice ownership? I talked a little briefly about this, the Startup Dental MBA. Again, this is kind of the last 4 months of a process. This is when I talk about systems and hiring processes and marketing. The reason why I bring this up now is because this part gets overlooked a lot. There are a lot of companies out there that can help you with developing systems, protocol, new patient experience, insurance credentialing. Obviously, marketing is very, very important. No marketing, no practice, no patients. So make sure you align yourself with mentors or somebody that can help provide this kind of training, because clinically, you're going to get training today and in the future as an associate and out there. However, the biggest challenge is here. The biggest, hardest transition is moving from associate to private practice ownership and understanding what goes into the business side of dentistry. And there's a lot that gets in there. And I could talk for hours and hours and hours about systems and hiring, but not this evening. Love to share more with you. And I'm going to leave you with this. I call it the Brady Principle. So a couple of years ago, I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I'm actually a Bears fan from Chicago originally, so unfortunately we're not that great. The Brady Principle is this. At the end of the Super Bowl, after he won his last Super Bowl, he was being interviewed by this gentleman on the left, Terry Bradshaw. And Terry came up and said, I'll give you my best Terry Bradshaw voice. Tom. He said, hey, so how'd you win the Super Bowl? And, what was the play that that gave you the chance to win the Super Bowl? And I don't know if anyone saw this, but Tom said, Terry, it wasn't one play. He said, it was that catch, it was that kick, it was that throw, it was that run. He said, if we take one of those things out, the results are very, very different. That's why I talk about the stages. If we take one piece out, whether you leave out marketing or leave out the permitting process or leave out the demographical process, the end result is vastly different. So we can't take one out and expect the same kind of results. Good. And I talked to you earlier about this best-selling book. I tell you what, we're in the midst of a giveaway for this book. So I'm sure everybody has one of these things attached to them. So if you like a free copy of the book, all I ask is this. It's a $67 book on Amazon. You can go to Amazon tonight, look it up, $67. It is free. All I ask is you help us with shipping, $7.95 for shipping. All you need to do is text location to 44222. My team internally will then send you a free copy of our book. Again, all I ask is that you cover the shipping on that of $7.95, and we'll send you a copy of our best-selling book. And with that, Kendra and Kristin, I will say thank you and Q&A. I'll go back.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. This was just as incredible as it was at noon, and we really appreciate you being here again tonight to answer some questions, of which we have received quite a few. So I will start from the one that was submitted around 7:50 or so. So it's about halfway through our presentation. And the question is, what is the typical number of new patients a new practice will get in a month? I know you gave an example earlier, but if you could maybe give a general overview on what to expect.
That's an awesome question. It would vary on specialty, but so if we're talking about like general dentists, my goal as a scratch startup is how quickly can we ramp up to say 50 new patients a month, very, very quickly. I've had practice owners that have ramped up to 100, 200 in a month, but the goal is, like, I would say it depends on the market. It really, really does. Some markets, if you're in parts of California, you may be 30 new patients to initially and then grow into that. And then, obviously my goal is somewhere between 50 to 100 by, say, month 6 to 8, in that range. Again, depending on a lot of factors. But if you're 30 to 50 initially, you're in good shape and you've got that spark to get the jump out of the gate fast. Great question.
Wonderful. All right, we're going to go into the next question here, and they keep coming in, so we might keep you on here for a while. All right, what are the ideal patients, and do you have complicated cases or simple cases?
Oh, cool. What are the ideal patients? Well, we would go through, like, internally. It varies on person. Again, everything that I don't have a book for a startup that says follow this book and here's your startup, because each one of my clients, for example, has a different profile kinds of patients. In other words, when you start to work as an associate and you finish up dental school, you're working as an associate, it's hard to be able to get an ideal patient profile really, really early. What I usually see is over time, when we start to ask the question of our clients, what kind of patients do you enjoy? And they go, and we actually ask them to name some of their patients. Obviously, no HIPAA violations or anything like that. But we say, make up the name. Michael. Okay, great. Tell me about Michael. Michael, he's 50 years old, and he came in for this procedure. He does this for a living and things like that. And we may go through like 2 or 3 more, and then we'll look back and go, wow, you like most of your patients that you love are between like 35 and 60. That doesn't mean that they don't like patients older than 60 or younger than 35, but everybody will gravitate towards a group. In other words, it may be younger people, it may be older people, maybe certain types of procedures. I think over time you'll start to see a trend that if you look back at your most favorite patients, the patients you just enjoyed, you'll start to see some commonalities of age, maybe what they do, income, things like that, and you'll start to formulate that. Because as you go out into private, you say, I want to go start up a practice. Full disclosure, you're always going to open up a practice and you may not love every one of your patients that walks in your practice, But as you go through a demographical analysis, you do want to look in an area and say, well, is there a lot of, if I want lots of families, then great, and then be suburban, and you may say, wow, there's lots of kids. I have clients, we literally have to like pin down and we say, what about kids? Do you want kids in your practice? And they go, I can work on kids. And it's like, okay, great. We know you can work on kids, but do you want them? And it's like this internal conflict. And they go, okay, I don't want kids. I don't like to work on kids. We go, awesome. So in other words, who do you like? And they go, oh, I really like 45 to 65. You know, they have this kind of income. They have these kinds of procedural needs and clinical needs that fits the kinds of procedures I love to do.
Great. I'm actually going to ask, I'm going to share back the presentation over to you, Stephen, and if you could put up the information about how to get the free book. We've got a few questions on here that people are interested in that number that you had on there. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation back over to you so you can put that slide up for everyone. There we go. Perfect.
Yep, there you go.
All right, we'll keep this slide up and we'll keep cruising through some questions. So this was a great one. How do I know if a startup is right for me?
Oh, wow. How many hours do we have for this, Kendra? How do I know if a startup is right for you? Quite simply, I would say this. A lot of our clients come to us and they say, I've worked in this environment at corporate dentistry. I've worked here. And I know a lot of times you will go out as you work as an associate, and the things that you'll learn are quite simply, typically two things, very important things. Number one, you'll learn what you would like to have in your own practice. As important, or probably more important, is what you don't want to have in your own practice. When the startup is right for you, it's when you know the only way to have a practice that will give you 100% of the freedom and control that you want to have. The only path is a startup. I did a presentation in Detroit about 3 months ago. At the end of the presentation, there was a doctor in the back of the room, a current practice owner, and I had done a little bit of background research on him, so I knew he had owned a practice. And he said, "Well, Stephen, you told me you wouldn't sell me on a startup." He goes, "Sell me on a startup." And I said, "Okay." I said, "So you've owned your practice, you acquired your first practice?" He goes, "Yes, I acquired my first practice. I did an acquisition." I said, "Awesome." I said, "How long have you owned the practice?" He said, "I'm going on about 6 years." I said, "Great." I said, "How long did it take you to fully implement all the systems and protocol of everything you wanted to have in that practice?" He said, 5. It took him 5 years to transition his patients, the team, and everything within the practice to 100% the way that he wanted. Some people don't want to wait 4 or 5 years to do it. Some people want to be able to walk in and say, I want to build it this way. I'm convicted to do it that way. Once you're committed to that, and you know there's no other path other than building it yourself, and you know that that's the path, then you fully committed yourself to a startup.
All right, Stephen, we have time for one more question, and we're already going over the time, but these are so good, so I'm going to keep you on just a little bit longer. All right, this last one's from our friend Pamela, and she has a great question. Would you recommend opening an office with a classmate or an associate? If so, why or why not?
On the Forbes top list of top corporations of like Forbes 500, there are only 4 corporations that have co-CEOs. 4 of like the top 500 in the entire country. There isn't strength in numbers when it comes to startups, and I do see this question a lot, and I get that. I don't want to discourage starting up as a partnership. The challenge with partnerships is you don't, with a startup, you're not going to double your revenue, but you're going to double your overhead. And it is nearly impossible to find a colleague or an associate that will have 100% of the exact same vision for your practice that you would want to have. And you don't gain any strength financially of going into it. So I candidly discourage partnerships starting up, because in a partnership, they always want to share this responsibility, and somebody has to be the conductor of the train to say where it's going to go and make these final decisions. And that's really tough if there's two that say, we always want to make equal decisions. Somebody has to take the lead to make the decision. So unfortunately, a lot of partnerships end up bad. I kind of equate it to like back in the, your best friend in high school, and you're like, oh, great, we're going to go to college together. We're going to be roommates. At the end of that freshman year, they're like, we're not even friends anymore, because we figured out like we're not really compatible, to that. So I would discourage partnerships.
All right, well, thank you so much. And I know there were a few of you that had specific questions for Stephen about consulting fees or services that him and his partner might have available. And I think there was one other person that might have had a question about how to get access to that book that he wanted to share. But what I will ask you guys is we're actually I'm going to cruise through this, remind everyone about National Leadership Conference, which is coming up in November. We look forward to seeing you all there. Check the website for more information. We've got tons of upcoming webinars coming up, so look for the next one that Truland High School is hosting on October 16th. It's focused on private practice ownership, so a very similar topic what we're talking about this evening. And then this is the slide that I wanted to get to, because I definitely want you guys to have Stephen's information, Christian's information, and then our team's information. So if there's any questions you guys have following tonight's presentation, please do reach out to Stephen or Christian or myself here at the office at that membership@asdanet.org. We are happy to provide additional information for all of you. And I'm sure Stephen would be happy to give more information about his services, as well as information about how to access the book. So with that, I will thank everyone for participating in tonight's program and remind you that we will have a quick survey that will pop up automatically after you guys log out. So make sure you're giving us all the feedback that you can. We want to continue to host programs like this, and definitely let Stephen know, how he did on tonight's presentation. Those that do participate in the survey will be entered to win a portfolio and gift card to make your own business cards. So you'll have everything ready to go when you start your own startup when you guys graduate from dental school. So thanks so much, Stephen, again, and Christian for being here. We just really look forward to working with you guys together on future programming.
Great. Thanks, Kendra. Thanks, Stephen.
I just want to make sure I stopped sharing my screen. Did you get the contact information up there, Kendra?
Let me put that back up there. Oh, that would have been helpful. Here we go. Let's get this back up there. Sorry, everyone. We had that wonderful information about that book up there the whole time. I apologize. So here's the contact information. Thanks so much for reminding me about that, Stephen. Thanks. All right, everyone. Thanks so much and have a great evening.
Thanks, you too. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.